Shout out to those users you never hear from. I recently left a jack-of-all-trades type position, where one of my jobs was to roll out new hardware on a 5-year refresh plan. I'd been at the company 4.5 years, dealing with 250 colleagues' IT issues all by myself, so you generally get to know most people in the company pretty well, even if only a superficial basis. 30 new laptops arrived to replace those due, and 2 names appear that I've never heard of before. I have a search for them in my help desk system, and they're not in there. They've never logged a ticket. Ask HR, who say they definitely exist and still work for us. Okay, then. I reach out to let them know. They're both home-based salespeople from around 300 miles away. One of them is due into head office in the next month or so we'll pick up both laptops then. So, laptops are built, left on a shelf. 6 weeks later a random knocks on the IT office door. Introduces himself as one of the unseen colleagues. Turns out he's a huge PC gamer, so knows most stuff. So much so that my predecessor who'd built his last laptop just made him a local admin. He also sorts most issues for his other colleague in the area, so he's a local admin of that. I say how it's good to finally meet. He jokes that he hopes we don't have to meet again, and I reply that we probably won't as I'm off to a new job in a couple of weeks. My second to last day, a package arrives. It's a card, signed from both of them, with a set of 3 whiskey miniatures from their local distillery. It was literally the only acknowledgement that I got for 4.5 years of service. As part of my wrapping up, I went through AD to check there were no old accounts I'd missed closing or anything, and found another. Sales again, this time 200 miles away in a different direction. Again, never logged a ticket, never emailed me. Somehow he made it 4.5 years at the company without asking for a single thing of IT. I was tempted to reach out and send him something as well. Those users are great. Had a few users at one job that knew a ton about specific somewhat niche applications but had been removed as power users so couldn't take care of their problems anymore if admin was needed, so anytime I had a ticket for them they just walked me through exactly what to do without me having to research first, and they were super nice and appreciative. I sometimes send IT with step-by-step instructions for what I want doing. I don't have admin. Sometimes it's easier to write the instructions out, and then it also gives a record of what was done. My company is trying to poise itself as the parent of a bunch of subsidiaries, and as a result I have 1,500 employees across 48 companies, with half of those still needing to be pulled into our tenant. Having someone I don't know or I do know send step-by-step instructions makes my day so much easier. Thank you so much for making my life easier. Signed, the only sysadmin on a team of 4 that gets a lot of support requests cause people don't know what to do. I speak you not, I just had a ticket where the guy complained he could not log into his computer because caps lock was on. We had to show him how to turn off caps lock by pressing the button. Just remove the button, otherwise you're going to get more tickets. Now that the user knows it is there, they'll rule 1 the next times. The ones who never call are the ones most apologetic for wasting your time. The one that calls 4 times a day to get help printing labels because she still hasn't figured it out in 5 years doesn't seem to feel that way. Isn't that your job? It certainly seems to be. When you're in IT, it seems to be your job to know how to do everyone else's jobs better than they can. At this point, if I started a company, I would only hire IT people as they seem to be the only ones qualified for 95% of the positions in a company. Well, it has a plug attached to it, so you must know precisely what to do with it or fix any problems that may arise with its use. But, ma'am, this is a tea kettle. I work with automotive dealerships. Do you know how often I am asked to fix battery chargers? All I say is, I know enough to know that that capacitor can kill me and I'm not touching it. That's wise, honestly. Was asked to take apart a rack UPS once to dispose the batteries. They didn't just pull out the front like all the other UPS units. Got the panel off despite the do not attempt to self-service label on the front of it. Then saw a couple capacitors, maybe 1.5x the size of a Coke can. And put that panel back on. Nah, I'm good thanks. To paraphrase a sci-fi book about future tech capacitors. With that power density, the only difference between a capacitor and a bomb is the way it releases power. The flip side is, when I have a low-maintenance user who actually asks me for something, I know it must be serious. One of my coworkers ran a remote office business side, not IT side, by himself, and he would even go into the server room for us sometimes. So when he calls with an issue, I know it isn't him not Googling or wanting hand-holding. Something really is going down. Something really is going down. We had a remote office with a tiny server cupboard about 50 miles away, 2 servers, comms equipment and a UPS. The office manager would check stuff for us from time to time, but once he phoned at 9 a.m. sharp on a Monday, I knew something must be up because he never, ever phoned. Turns out the UPS had exploded and caught fire, melted the cheap carpet and scorched a mop handle. He was just phoning to say it was okay as the fire was out now, but could they please have a new UPS? Wow. The UPS exploded and caught fire and melted the carpet and scorched a mop handle, and yet the rest of the gear and building were okay. That's unbelievable. Interestingly, the guy still didn't call with a problem, at least not one that required any kind of problem solving. He just needed some equipment replaced. Yeah, most UPS units are fairly well contained. This one melted some plastic, which dripped onto the carpet. I think the mop must have been leaning against the unit. We got sent a series of very detailed photos for insurance purposes. Damn APCs with their let's blow up the batteries like balloons problems. I've had to take crowbars and grinders to them to get the old battery packs out of dead units. A hobby of mine is drone racing, and lithium polymer batteries can be quite exciting when they are physically damaged or over-discharged and continue to be used. Thankfully the capacity is only max 1500 mAh 6 cells, but they release an enormous amount of smoke and heat. Ooh, you got the magic smoke from the spicy pillows. That's awesome. I'm gonna use that on a sticker. D. It's crazy that two of the only people who didn't need your direct help were the only ones to actually give you a parting gift. I wonder how many people in any given company just don't need IT while they are there. It's crazy that two of the only people who didn't need your direct help were the only ones to actually give you a parting gift. My boss only spoke to me once in the month between handing in my resignation and my last day. We were scheduled for a Zoom meeting on my last day. He didn't turn up to it. As I was a one-man department with a boss in a different country, no one else organized anything. I got a couple of emails from people wishing me well. I'm not saying I deserved a lavish gift or anything, but at least a little acknowledgement. I didn't get anything from my last place either, but that's because I left at lunchtime and the only person who knew was my boss. One job I worked as a temp floating from workplace to workplace filling in. I had only seen my boss once at the very beginning. After a couple of months, he showed up at the site I was at. I didn't recognize him. I'm a bike messenger, which is a fairly decentralized job. You see your coworkers in glimpses riding past. I have two bosses and I dropped off paperwork with one a few months ago. The new guy rode up to me the other day and called me by name, asked how I was doing. I was like, hey, new guy. It was my boss. Before we pulled admin rights from users last year, yes really I had a few users I could rely on to do things out at our locations. It was pretty nice knowing that for basic installs of printers and similar things they could handle. Now they have to call for us to authenticate though. We've formalized some of those users into IT champions. Usually one or two people from each department that get slightly elevated rights to help with small things. They get a small monthly bonus for the extra work, and they filter out so much of the low-level support. I considered starting something like this, but I feel like it would create some chaos because we have more than a few users who feel like they know things when in reality they're not any more knowledgeable than most other users. Doubt I could convince the board to go with it though, even if it would help us out a ton. We individually vet each of these people and they lose the permissions quickly if they misstep. They get a small pay bump for it though, and it's often an inroad for getting into IT from other departments, so they have some incentives to not make a mess of things for us. They are the only people that can ask for documentation from IT. They can check out rights for some things through an online portal which audits their reasons, and we have a private champions channel giving them a direct line to IT for all the weird questions they get asked by their end users. They're not usually too much more knowledgeable than most end users at first, but our first requirement is someone that actually reads IT emails, and that tends to filter most people out. From there we really try to invest in training them, since either they'll be a long-term resource for us in that department or they're about to move to IT and become a colleague. We pitched this to leadership as a way to build closer relationships between IT business units, and it's largely helped. I may frame it that way next time something comes up and we really need hands on it. I just saw a teacher today and made the comment, "Things must be going well for you this year. I have hardly even seen you." And that's really saying something when you add in optional distance learning and migration from PC to iPad. This is my brother. He's a 27-year-old chemistry teacher in a district where the average age of the department is about 55, and he's tech savvy enough to have built his gaming rig. He's essentially just backup tech support at this point for half his department. Kind of the reverse of this. When I go to a remote site and one of the users, in a friendly manner, says, "I haven't seen you in a long time," my usual response to that is a laugh along with, "It's because you haven't broken anything." Conversely, why are we paying for IT? They never do anything. Just means they're doing their job, being proactive and staying in front of things. Your software infrastructure must be an outstandingly rock-solid build-out. I'm a former Tier 3 guy who moved into software development quite some time back. I work at a company that I guarantee every single person here has heard of. And I still have to contact IT now and then to deal with some wonky piece of crap software that decides to choke on itself. In fact, I'll be doing that to deal with our 2FA app later today. I mean, I'd love to never have to put in a ticket for IT, but they have our workstations locked down so hard I can't fix even the simplest of things that would be a no-brainer if I was at home on my PC. But at the same time, for each freedom you give it, something new the user can break. The hardest to fix problems are the ones caused by those who know just enough to be dangerous but not enough to stop and ask for help. Source: I have 3 boot looping machines waiting for me at the office, all with probably different things wrong with them. I knew why they do it. And I have no problem that they do it. But when they make it so that the simplest of tasks require a ticket to have them come do it, of course they'll hear from everybody at some point. Reminds me of my school. Want to change the brightness? Well, good luck if it's not on a dedicated button, kid. Then, there's the opposite. I'm a consultant and work for an international company. I have nothing to do with the internal IT, and thus have no privilege as it should be. Though I do have a local admin account for my laptop. Helpdesk is based in India. Shocking, I know, and I almost never need to open a ticket. When I do thought, I have to battle through L1 and L2 to get to someone who can actually help me. It's frustrating, to say the least. Ours were generally pretty good about listening, and I actually trained a few over the phone on issues they had never seen. Usually it was just something I didn't have a password for. This one lady though, I'll never forget her. She starts going through the script after I gave the usual open a ticket info, and I politely stopped her. Explained that this was a compatibility issue between 2 properties with different versions accessing the same program. Like Hotel 1 had 5.1 and Hotel 2, 5.2. To open Hotel 2 at Hotel 1 messed up some things, but we had figured out some workarounds for it. I explained to her that this is extremely uncommon. She's not going to find any documentation on it. I've already done all the steps she's about to go through. Or they don't apply. I know IT hates that, but I had been unofficially doing their IT for years and knew what I was talking about. She actually refused to escalate, refused to listen to anything until we went through her script. I even told her what was wrong and the steps we would take to fix it. I should have just hung up and called back to get someone else while she closed the ticket or tried to call back. Whatever, I didn't need that computer immediately. Left her remoted in for 3 hours while she went through all the possible steps that had nothing to do with the problem. You could tell she didn't know anything about the application and was just following guide after guide. Finally she calls me back and says she's sorry but has to escalate to the next tier. I sigh, laugh, and tell her to please just type in her credentials like I originally asked and watch me fix it so she doesn't have to waste their time. 5 minutes later it's fixed. I explained exactly what I was doing and why, and you could tell she still didn't follow.